Okay, in this podcast, we're going to discuss mostly North American versus European sports cultures and how we're different, but also we're going to discuss a few other bits and pieces. So I'm going to start with the sports cultures being different. In North America, there's a draft system, and there is no promotion relegation for the most part. Although I will get onto one team that does play in a promotion relegation system because it's actually playing in a European-based league, and that's the Toronto Wolfpack. Them aside, every other sport is draft based, single league, affiliate league below, minor leagues, junior leagues, that kind of structure. There's no way of that minor league team getting into the major league. So promotion relegation that doesn't exist in the North American sporting culture. Whereas over here in Europe, we have sort of the draft system where a junior club will develop the youth talent and then the senior club take them. We have each individual sports club will develop the youth talent from a young age through the ranks to the first team and to the professional level. That's how our youth system works. We also have the promotion relegation system in most leagues. Some leagues, like ice hockey, don't, but for the most part, most of the leagues, professional, even some ice hockey leagues, have a promotion relegation style system, and there's different ways of doing it. But that's for the most part. Apart from the Pro 14 rugby, which covers which covers Italy, South Africa, Republic of Ireland, Wales, and Scotland, there is no promotion relegation in that. That is a solid league-based system. And the Elite League Ice Hockey that I'm aware of, and the DE, the German Ice Hockey League as well, they're ones that I can think of off the top of my head. There's a few others floating around in Europe, ice hockey league, the KHL and the Czech league and the Slovak league, things like that, where there's no real promotion relegation that I'm aware of. However, that's only two sports that do that. Outside of the Pro 14 rugby union, every other league, rugby union and rugby league structure is promotion relegation. And they have youth academies and youth development systems and youth teams in that club. So those young players come through from an early age, get into the reserves, get into the main team and play. And that's how our sporting culture works. Also, it's different sporting culture where in North America teams can get relocated from city to city a lot. Over here in Europe, it's more of a community-based thing where the club's set up locally by local businessmen or local fans or local players that set a team together. They'll come up with a club. They'll maybe an individual owner or maybe a partnership of owners or even fan ownership, and the club is based around the local community, the local town, the local city, sometimes the local village. Whereas in North America, a rich businessman goes, I have an arena, I have a stadium, I wish to put a professional sports team here. It gets put to a vote by the league itself. The other owners will go, this is a good or bad idea. They say yay or nay, 2/3 majority, and a team can come in. They pay an expansion fee to join the league, various amount of millions, depending on the sport. Boom, there you go. That's the basic differences. The difference in how professional sport is done and the sporting culture. Our fans are really mental over here in Europe. We like having, riots at games. I mean, the North Americans do the odd sporting riot, but over here we have regular crowd disturbances or overzealous fans or hooligans or whatever you want to call them, ultras. We have all sorts, and the American fan base can't quite sometimes understand how really violent some they just say, oh, they're just overzealous fans. No, there's actually organised criminal elements to some of these sports clubs which get exceptionally violent, and are organised gangs. They're called football firms, football ultras, hooligans, very other slang names attached to said tribal warfare, and you just have to look at the footage of the European Championship football or the World Cup football when fans are trying to kill each other. Just look at 2 years ago, the Euros in France, some of the ugly scenes there, and you've got to look at the World Cup in '98, France, the Euros in 2000, some of the ugly scenes there. Just to name a few tournaments where there was 2006, the Germans and the Poles had a big mass riot in Dortmund. 2012, the Russians and the Poles had a riot in Warsaw. It's not just English fans that have this thing. It's a European-wide issue, and you don't really have that in America. Normally, when there's a sports riot, it's either your team's just lost a final or won a final, and it's the overzealous fans, as the American media would see it. But over in Europe, there is a dedicated group of hooligans attached to a sports club who will try and cause trouble. That's a difference in sporting culture. The different style of ownership as well. There's a lot of fan involvement or membership involvement of sports clubs over in Europe as well, and the same in Australia. There's a lot of members sign up for clubs and pay their membership fee and things like that. That's a way to make revenue. So the fans have a lot more involvement in how a team is run, whereas over in North America it is the rich owner or the rich ownership group of billionaires who run the teams, and the owners run the league, whereas the league runs the clubs over here. There's a different league structure behind the scenes with the administration of the league and how leagues are run. It's an interesting difference of cultures, and I think both sporting cultures could learn a bit of each other. I think we're slowly adapting some North American models to, as I said, the Pro 14 and the Elite League over here in Europe. And the DEL Ice Hockey League in Germany, there is some similarities with the league structure where there's no promotion relegation. However, they're normally sanctioned by rugby or ice hockey governing bodies, nationally or internationally. The promotion relegation argument's been made a lot for the MLS. It's being made a lot, and it has been made by other YouTubers and other sports commentators and other sports as a possibility for things further down the line in helping make sport maybe more competitive, make teams try harder, various things behind it. But we've seen over in Europe that ticket prices are going up faster than wages are. We're seeing a lot of anger towards that over here in the UK, especially. I'm not sure about on the continent, but there are concerns about the Champions League final in Kiev and how much that's costing for not only Real Madrid fans but also Liverpool fans. There is issues with the FA and Wembley, and we've discussed that a lot on this channel. So if you're new to the channel, just go through my playlists. Just feel free to browse around, and it'll be on the Football Soccer playlist, the FA and Wembley sale. Feel free to browse and have a look. I mean, I cover every sport really, and I'm happy to discuss that. And that's something else that I'm going to get onto is the viewership figures in the last couple of days, especially. I've just been watching where people are watching from, because we've had a lot of activity on. I mean, this is a small channel. We've had a lot of activity the last week or so, and it's very interesting to see where people are watching from. And the issues with ticket pricing, and I've had this discussion with some Vegas Golden Knights fans, okay, and we're trying to convert dollars to pounds. Now our currency is slightly stronger, so you pay more dollars for a ticket than more pounds for a ticket. However, converting it, the average ticket price here is high enough, and we're talking anywhere between, for English Premier League, 50 to 120 quid, I would think. I know Liverpool's away ticket price was £77 on average a couple of years ago, which led to protests. So I'm going on by what I've heard from other fans on my channel who are English Premier League fans, or just as the Americans would call soccer fans, and I'm going to get on to why I'm saying soccer in a minute. I'm going by what they say, how much they're paying for a ticket. That's not including travel, food and drink at the ground, and travel to and from the ground. Okay. The average adult price is between £50 and £120. There's a big range there, because you've got Bournemouth at the lower end, one of the smaller clubs in the Premier League, and Burnley, who are more affordable to your Arsenals, your Chelseas, your Man Uniteds, your Liverpools, your Man Cities, and some of the clubs, the big six, who are charging stupid amounts of money. And there's also reasons for that as well. And that's something else I'll get on to in a minute, to do with salaries, which is very, very important, that we have a difference on some leagues, and it's not a universal thing over here to have a salary cap, whereas it is pretty much over in North America, it is universal to have a salary cap. We've worked out that in a straight swap of currency, without the exchange rate fluctuations and the charges and the fees and the taxes put on there, if this sale of Wembley was to go ahead and Saeed Khan was to buy Wembley, ticket prices would go up. Because looking how much Americans pay, I'm saying North Americans because I know the Canadian dollar keeps fluctuating at the moment. It's getting stronger against the US dollar, but it's not as strong as it has been, where it actually has been the stronger currency a couple of times in the last 20 years. So I'm going by the US dollar here. What North Americans pay for their tickets, if I was to convert that to pounds, is silly money for what an average fan would pay. And these are average ticket prices. So I'm looking at the average ticket price and I'm converting it from US dollars to pounds, and I'm just like, whoa. Okay, I don't think the average British fan is willing to pay those prices if, let's say, the Elite League was to improve in level in ice hockey. I don't think the average British fan would be willing to pay. If Wembley is sold and Jacksonville Jaguars move over here, yeah, it's only 8 home games before playoffs, but I don't think the average English fan is going to be willing to pay that much for 8 games a season. Just no way on earth. And I've had discussions about that, and I don't think the NFL will allow a move to take place, because if the NBA have already rejected a team ever relocate or expanding in London, if they've asked the richest team, the Boston Celtics, what their views on having a major league franchise or a major league team from North America here in the UK or in Europe, because the euro is stronger than the dollar as well. And when the richest team in North American pro sports goes, yeah, no, that is a damning indictment. And the reasons given are logistics, travel, TV times, the tax system over here, various factors. Would fans be able? Would away fans be able to get tickets? Would the home fans want to come? Would the British fans want to buy in? All sorts. And they've done their projections. They've worked out the running costs with what's happened since 2008 with the financial side of things and the financial crash and issues economically. I don't see long term how it could work on an economic basis. And there's some political stuff in there as well, with political issues with should a certain political party get into office and be the next government, there could be far-reaching tax issues which may or may not lead to capital flight leaving the country and a financial brain drain, if you know what I mean, where all the skilled, wealthy people who are in high-paid jobs right now will pack up and leave, and that could have knock-on effects for the local economy. Getting back to salaries, though, the English Premier League does not have a salary cap. In fact, English football entirely has no salary cap, whereas every major league sport in the US and Canada does have a salary cap, and that is a big issue as European football is the biggest sport over here. English football, whatever you want to call it, soccer, no salary cap, and that includes across all leagues across Europe. And that is an issue why the ticket price is stupidly out of control and unbalanced between club to club in the same league. Agents' fees aren't transparent. Salaries aren't transparent with what players are earning through player salary. Some of the bonuses are really bizarre to attract players. There's issues with the TV deal that's been signed and the new one that's still at TV rights for sale, which could make it even wealthier and make more money for the Premier League than the current one in place that expires in a couple of years' time. Yeah, fans aren't happy with the fact that their ticket price goes up year on year, higher than inflation, well higher, and the players' wages and transfer fees have gone through the roof, and fans are starting to get really aggravated, and there are a lot of fan protests against ownership of teams, mismanagement, ticket pricing, the fact that they're being taken for granted. They're your customer base. Okay, yeah, you've got these TV deals, but if we don't turn up, it looks really crap for TV with empty stadiums. They've had walkouts of games, they've had protests before games, and I don't think the FA and the owners of clubs are taking us seriously enough as sports fans. Rugby union and rugby league, and I believe the Elite League Ice Hockey in the UK has salary caps. I'm not sure about cricket. Motorsport doesn't. There's a variety of other sports, like individual sports like tennis and golf, where you're paid by where you finish in tournaments you enter. Boxers get paid by the promotion and how the promoters work out how much the prize pot is from the sponsors and TV deal and tickets sold. So there are certain sports when you play in individual sports like snooker, darts, tennis, golf, boxing, MMA, and things like that, where they get paid in, from the prize pot, like winning or losing, they get paid. That's where they get their money from, and from sponsorship deals. And that's not very clearly defined either. But there's the difference in sport and culture. Is there's a salary cap culture in the US and Canada, and there's not a salary cap culture in Europe for the most part. Not all leagues do have a salary cap in place. Not all sports have a salary cap in place universally. I think European football needs at some point to get a salary cap. It needs to have a transfer cap as well, and address the rampant inflation and the in the transfer market. They need to have a ticket price cap in all leagues, and reduce, go accordingly by level of league level, because what we have seen with the Champions League final and the FA Cup final, two big finals where we know the two teams that are taking part, the amount of corporate tickets being sold is extortionate and too high, and they're limited allocations for both sets of teams. Same with the Champions League, 20,000 tickets are corporate. About half the stadium is corporate seats, and the limited allocations for Liverpool and Real Madrid fans is not acceptable. Same with the FA Cup, a lot of corporate seats through this club Wembley, which I think is wrong. Also, the travel costs to get to Kiev for the final have been highlighted, and it's a difficult location to actually fly direct to. Very few airlines will fly direct there. There's obviously the political issues in eastern Ukraine right now with the Russians and Ukrainians and various separatist groups. So I'm surprised UEFA chose Kiev for the Champions League final, considering the political backdrop behind that. And I try and keep politics off this channel as much as possible, but it's very, very difficult when it's intertwined with sport, and politicians could do something to help sport. That's something else. We do have a lot of government involvement in sport through government funding for grassroots projects, government funding for associations such as the FA to build Wembley, for example. Whereas in North America, it's a little bit different. Who fits the bill for building a stadium? Who fits the bill for grassroots development? And all various things like that. Whereas over here, there's more government involvement indirectly in grassroots sport. Now, when you look at professional sport, they have to take a step back. But when it comes to Olympic sport, there are government programs, there's grassroots programs, and that's a culture clash as well. And how the TV rights are done with advertising and ad breaks, we literally don't have as many ad breaks in sport as the North American market does. And I do actually now think that some North American sports fans are getting a bit annoyed with the excessive ad breaks, especially NHL fans. They are not happy with some of the ad breaks during NHL broadcasts, and that includes in Canada and in the US. That's starting to aggravate some fans, a large minority of fans, should I say. And then I've seen a lot of comment sections on other YouTube channels where they discuss the amount of TV ad breaks during sports, and keeps coming up. But I'm going to leave that there on talking about the difference in cultures. We've discussed the Toronto Wolfpack game today against the Warrington Wolves. It's great to see a European sport being played in North America in rugby league. It's great to see that there's a professional team in North America in rugby league. Okay, admittedly they're playing in the European Super League system, which has promotion relegation, and this is something that the fan base will have to adapt to. because they're used to not having this promotion relegation system, and they're going to see it in action because Toronto are running away with the Rugby League Championship to get into the Super League. They're top of the table. They've failed to win twice this season. They've won every other game. They have a great record. They have a great team they put together of really good players. And this is the first time an North American team is going to be using the promotion relegation system. This is their second or third season. They got promoted last year, so they're going to get more used to this team going up the levels. And I think this will be a learning curve for North American sports fans watching the Toronto Wolfpack play. There are also plans to get a New York team into the rugby league structure of Super League. And next year, Rugby Union team will be joining Major League Rugby. But again, no promotion relegation in that system because it's a North American league. There is no link to a European league there. Now, we've discussed the differences, and now we're going to go on to other topics briefly. It is interesting how, and I find this interesting when on comment sections when it comes to professional sport, because I do look at other YouTubers and see how they do their content, how they interact with other YouTubers, because we are a big community, and this is important. Some of my subscribers I subscribe to, and they normally are fan channels actually of a team that they support or a league that they support, a one particular sport. Now I cover all sports, so when I'm talking to NHL YouTubers or hockey YouTubers, and I'm talking to English football, so soccer YouTubers. Now, a couple of them are fan channels where they are a fan of that team that they support, and they will do videos on it. And then there's others that will cover the one sport. And then I come across, so they're the ones I really like talking to the most. I've got a couple of Vegas Golden Knights fans who've got their own channels who discuss Golden Knights games, squad moves, playoffs. And they've subbed to my channel, and I've subbed to theirs, and I'm happy to support. So it's interesting, but let me slightly move away from discussing that to the last, as I promised, the last couple of days. What I've noticed with the viewership. Now, I can occasionally be critical of North American fans and how they don't quite understand the promotion relegation system and how our sporting culture is different. Now, I've grown up watching a lot of North American-based sports. I don't mind watching the NFL. I like the Green Bay Packers. If I was forced to choose an NFL team to support, it would be the Green Bay Packers, the Cheeseheads. But I'm a massive ice hockey fan, so I've been watching ice hockey since I was 2-3 years old. I've been watching the NHL for a very, very long time, for most of my life. And I'm very, very lucky that firstly, I've seen NHL players play in the UK during the lockouts that we've had, and they played at my local ice rink. They played games at my local ice rink where they've been part of the teams playing at my local team here in the UK. And if you follow my channel, you'll know that I have done a few videos on my local ice hockey team. I've done my jersey collection. I've discussed the history of not only my local team, but also the leagues they played in, and the history of British ice hockey since 1995. I've done a video on that. I've done videos on some of our rival teams as well. I've done videos on the various leagues of British ice hockey, so I have an interest in an North American style sport. And this is what I'm going to go on to. I have a lot of American and Canadian viewers, a lot of US and Canadian viewers, and they have really been in competition with each other the last couple of days for who can get the most views. Now, I know the American population is bigger than the Canadian population. There's a lot more millions of people, but it's been really interesting just charting how many US citizens and how many Canadian citizens are basically watching my videos. Australians as well. I have a lot of Australian subscribers, but the US and Canadians, they have really had a lot of interest in my channel the last couple of weeks, and they're not only just interested in the North American sports that I discuss, they're also exceptionally interested in some of the European teams that I discuss and some of the issues happening in worldwide sport. I noticed when the Women's FA Cup final was played, I had viewers in the US and Canada watching that video and liking or disliking or subscribing because of it. So there was, and that video was seen all over the world. So it's not just the US and Canada that I've got people watching. I've got people watching all over the world. And because I cover multiple sports, I can appeal to multiple nationalities, multiple countries, multiple fan bases, different societal groups. And this is what I find interesting about sport, is how much it actually brings people together to not just discuss the differences and the issues, or who's a good player, who's a bad player, who's a good coach, who's a bad coach, this contract, is it a good contract, is it a bad contract. It is a unifier. It brings people together. Now, I have done a lot of videos on North American, when I say American, sports leagues recently. Mostly the MLS and the NHL, but I've also looked at Major League Baseball, and there's a reason for that as well, because the MLB has finally agreed and signed up to taking games to the UK for their part of their international series. Now, the other major leagues have been doing this for years. The NBA started it in, I believe, 1990, when I was still, I think, a small toddler. But it's taken 28 years for the Major League Baseball to finally sign an agreement with a stadium over here, which is the London City Stadium, former Olympic Stadium, where West Ham play their league games. Sign an agreement with a city, London, and give fixture dates for next June, the 29th and 30th of next June. So in 13 months' time, we're going to have 2 baseball games between the Red Sox and the Yankees. Now, I'm really surprised it's taken Major League Baseball this long to come to Europe. There's a lot of American military personnel, not just in the UK, but across Western and Central Europe. There is a lot of American businessmen and women, and there's a lot of American expats who come over here to work with companies and have settled down and set up roots. Their kids go to school here, they work here, some may want to retire here. We have a lot of American tourists coming over. I'm exceptionally surprised Major League Baseball has taken this long to play, not just in London, but anywhere in Europe, because the NHL has been doing it. The NHL has promised even more games, including pre-season and regular season games. The NFL has had its international series in London for over a decade. The NBA pops in and out occasionally, but has been doing it since 1990, so I'm really surprised it has taken this long to get Major League Baseball here. Major League Baseball does have issues, though. Its revenues are falling. It's still making a profit year on year, but its revenues are slowly falling, and attendances at some franchises are down. And that's partly to do with the aftermath of the steroid scandal, the juicing the ball scandal. There's been a few other baseball scandals as well, but when it was known that players were on steroids to get home runs, and it was sort of a badly kept secret, but fans preferred not to officially admit to knowing. But when it all hit the fan, that destroyed a lot of confidence in the sport, and it's taking a long time to recover. So hopefully we can see what happens next year. I do know there are some British baseball fans who follow my channel. I am aware of I'm aware of it. I'm aware of some interest. However, what will the ticket price be? What British broadcast will have the broadcast rights for the UK? What time will the games take place? Because bearing in mind the Red Sox and the Yankees are from the East Coast, there's a 5-hour time difference. We're 5 hours ahead. What time will these games be broadcast for the US market? That's crucial. How many ad breaks will there be? If there's too many ad breaks, would that annoy a lot of fans? Would people start turning off over here in the UK? Would that affect whether Major League Baseball decides to carry on coming back? They plan to come here for a minimum of 3 years and maybe beyond. So they plan to come back the following season, season after, and season after that, and so on and so on. If the British TV audience turns off because of the over-reliance on ad breaks, and they start switching off, and they start getting bored, and the TV ratings aren't great, would that affect them going, okay, we've signed an agreement with the British TV broadcasters to host games, British fans aren't watching, they're not buying in, with that effect? That's a possibility. Now, obviously, the Yankees and Red Sox are known for their baseball caps and T-shirts, and people buying them who aren't really baseball fans, but they see the logos and they see it as a fashion symbol. So has that given them a full sense of their sales? They are the 2 biggest franchises in baseball. They are the 2 biggest supported franchises in baseball. But the fact it's taken nearly 30 years to get Major League Baseball playing in Europe a competitive international series game. They've done Asia, they've done Latin America. A lot of the players come from Asia and Latin America who play the game. There's already a big interest. That's not going to a new market, because we know historically the Japanese have been into baseball for nearly 100 years. We know the Latin Americans have been into baseball since, well, 100 years. We know, because of the economic connections that the US has with those regions and the political connections, that's why there's an interest there, because American businessmen, American military personnel would play the game, the locals would pick it up, they want it to play the game, and there's a lot of Latinos and Asians who play in the Major League Baseball now. So again, they were going already to an existing fan base and just cash cowing it. Now they're coming over to Europe. I think they've waited a bit too long. It may, and the fact they pulled out of Europe twice before in the last 6 years might have damaged the brand as well, because they were meant to play in 2012 and last year in London, and they pulled out. So that's something to consider. But because I've discussed a lot of these things, Americans and Canadians are really interested. And I make no secret of the fact that I like the Winnipeg Jets and the Arizona Coyotes in the NHL, and I always have like the original Jets, the Coyotes, and I like the current Jets as well. Then, the Jets, Coyotes are my two favourite teams in that order. But I will happily watch NHL ice hockey. Happily. Quite happily. Every day, all day. But I don't want to be seen as solely a one-sport channel. I pride myself in the fact that there probably are other YouTubers who do it similar to me, who cover multiple sports in this way, but I've rarely come across an individual who does it. I think more post to post, which is the second channel for post to post, which is an hockey channel, they do little bits from other sports, but not like this. So I find it interesting that I've not come across many other YouTubers who cover multiple sports in the way I do, and the way I discuss it, and the way I do match reviews, and the way I do match previews, and the way I talk about an individual athlete doing something, or an individual manager getting sacked, or a fan base, or a sport, or look at a career history of a player. I've done a lot of those cricket videos yesterday, you may have noticed, on looking back at a brief look at the career of said player. And I'm more than happy to keep doing what I'm doing. I start my new job tomorrow, so I'll be putting up less content per day, which is not to say like I won't be making videos. I'll be making 1 or 2 videos a day rather than 5 or 6 at my peak. I think I did 9 videos yesterday, and I think when I start my new job, I'm going to have to work around my work hours. I'm going to be up really early in the morning, like 5, 6 in the morning, and I'm going to be getting in from work 12 hours later, and I will have limited time to do as much research and spend as much time doing videos because of my work hours. It's part and parcel of life. This is fun doing what I do. But I'm going to leave that there because we've been going on for half an hour now, and we've discussed the differences between North American sport and European sport, and a few other bits and pieces. And it was good to see Toronto Wolfpack play on British TV. Okay, they lost, but it was good to see that they were live streaming it, and the broadcasters in Canada were showing it in Canada. And yeah, we're 5 hours ahead, but the game kicks off at 3:30, so it's 10:30, late breakfast. People are actually having in a cafe, thousands of people in locations where they had the game on. So it's good to see a Canadian audience. The fans in Canada bought in Toronto for this team, and yeah, I'm gonna leave that there. So thank you very much for watching. A bit more of a ramble on this podcast. We've discussed a lot of issues that I could have done into like 8 separate videos, really, but because of having to get an early night tonight and start my new job tomorrow, I've got to sort out all my work gear, my work boots, safety gear, all that kind of stuff. I have less time to devote to the channel than I've had done for the last 3.5 months. But that's not to say the channel's going anywhere. We're still going to keep making stuff, and I might consider Patreon. Patreon's definitely going to be an option going forward. I'm just going to have to ask around to get a bit of advice on Patreon, and if you guys, the subscribers, be willing to be patrons, that is great. And if that helps me grow the channel, fine. It's something to think about. And I thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, you made it all the way to the end of this little rant. Thank you very much. Feel free to browse around. And don't forget to place your comments below, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.